like if you do your research and you dig in and you realize like NFTs are really cool, there's lots of ways you can participate in the upside of that, either by buying Ethereum or buying NFTs directly. There's just, I mean, it's really, again, the Wild West. And you have to be careful about how much you invest, obviously, but people would have said similar things about Bitcoin in its early days. It kind of felt like you may want to take a small bet on that trend being huge. And I personally think that it is going to be really huge.
If your parents came to you today, what would you advise them in terms of this, like NFT world? Like stay out, wait for it to settle, go buy this stuff. Like what would you recommend for them, or like your,
just from a purely financial standpoint?
Yeah.
I don't know if I would necessarily recommend buying a lot of NFTs as like an investment unless you're willing to like do a lot of research, because they're just more complicated. You could buy an NFT index. Those are starting to exist. Bitcoin doesn't excite me that much, to be honest. But there's a very compelling theoretical case for why Bitcoin could continue going up in price. So I don't want to ignore that if I was giving advice. Ethereum, I think, has a long way to go still. So I would say maybe like Ethereum and a mix of layer one blockchains that are trying to compete with Ethereum.
Interesting. So if you're, family member, you wouldn't actually say go buy NFTs right now.
Well, I would say go check out all the NFTs, and if there's something that excites you, and like if there's a creator that you want to support, or if there's a game you want to play, or some economy you want to participate in, then maybe buy an NFT, right? Or like if you think CryptoKitties are awesome and you want to show one off on your in your account, then that's a good reason to buy an NFT. But I would say like if you're going to try to invest in NFTs, or that's not the main purpose of them, in my opinion.
If you don't think there's investment, what do you see it as?
There is that angle to it, but I don't think that's the only angle, right? I think there's an angle where a digital asset or an NFT can represent any sort of digital asset that might have inherent utility to it, or might be a way to support an artist in the same way that people buy art, not because it's necessarily an investment, but because they want to show it off somewhere, right? Like a lot of people buy digital art to show it off in their virtual houses on Decentraland or CryptoVoxels, which are definitely worth checking out.
I am curious, have you seen any NFTs out there that you're like, wow, that's way overpriced, or like it's way underpriced? I see the CryptoKitty shit at like $50K, and I'm like, this is fucking... Buddy at lunch today was like, a friend of ours bought a CryptoPunk for $55K.
Uh-huh.
I was like, that just seems overpriced. So I'm curious if there's anything you see out there that's over.
The ones that I think are underpriced are crypto domain names. So there's yet to be like a speculative craze around crypto domain names. So there's ENS, Ethereum Name Service, and .crypto names. And these are both like the equivalent of .coms in the .com time, right? I think that these are extremely undervalued. Like if you look at the market history for them, fundraise.eth sold for 0.07 ETH. Really not that much. And that's like in my opinion, a prime piece of internet real estate. I think that's a very overlooked market.
What are the things like this I think are like the people don't know about, like the domain stuff?
I think virtual land is still pretty underappreciated. So are you familiar with like Decentraland or CryptoVoxels? It's like Second Life, where where you own land inside of the virtual world, and then you can build stuff on top of that land. The leaders are called Decentraland and CryptoVoxels, and then the Sandbox. And
Decentraland?
Decentraland, yeah.
So there's Decentraland.
And then CryptoVoxels, which is kind of like
CryptoVoxels?
Yep.
Dude, this is so... I mean, this is such an interesting time, man. I was curious, like, what did you see early on that gave you conviction this was going to be anything?
You remember CryptoKitties, right?
Yeah.
The fact that people were buying and selling digital cats for hundreds of thousands of dollars was just like so bizarre that you gotta look a little more into it and figure out what's going on. Like rarely do you see something like that. It's symbolic of some larger trend. Like Bitcoin was similar, right? Like there's all this weird Bitcoin stuff going on, like these hacks and like, just weird stuff. And then eventually Bitcoin became a massive thing. It just took like way longer than people thought. Like I remember hearing about Bitcoin and thinking kind of similarly, right? Like, oh, okay, digital currency sounds interesting. I'm going to go back to my life now. A couple of years later, it's huge. So I think we had the same intuition around CryptoKitties. It's like, this is super weird. Like, what's going on here? Usually when there's something weird going on, it means that something down the road is going to happen around it. So we dug into it and we're like, okay, what does this actually mean? Well, what it means is that for the first time, people can own stuff on the internet. We have all of these digital assets and stuff that we like consume on the internet. We have our Twitter handles, we have our photos on Instagram, but we only own them within the context of one particular platform. You can't go and sell your Twitter handle on some other site or like move it between these different platforms. And so there's really no property rights on the internet. What would it mean to have real property rights on the internet? Well, we think all sorts of new markets that just couldn't exist will emerge and are starting to emerge. And one of those markets is maybe the one that's easiest to wrap one's head around is this idea of digital art. So if you think about why is physical art valuable, you're not buying a piece of physical art for the raw materials. You wouldn't sell a replica of the Mona Lisa that was visually identical and near physically identical for $100 million. But the original Mona Lisa, the fact that there are property rights attached to it, and you can prove that you own it, and you can prove that this is the actual Mona Lisa, means a lot. And you can't do that in the digital world up until now. You can't say like, there's no neutral way to say this particular piece of digital art is the original and it's owned by this address. Now we have that. And so then the market can sort of start to emerge from there. And it's not going to happen overnight. People aren't going to like suddenly value digital assets as much as physical ones, but it's already happening with things like, are you familiar with CryptoPunks?
Yeah.
Like CryptoPunks were given away for free back in 2017, or 10,000 of them, and now they sell for millions. You can make all of these arguments that CryptoPunks aren't valuable, but at the end of the day, someone paid $1 million for them. That's a fact, right? That's kind of the answer is like, we saw weird stuff happening. We investigated further and realized that, this was actually a pretty significant shift. It just would take a while.
You guys launched when?
In early 2018.
So for 2018, did you guys have signs? Like, was it early at Facebook, or if you look at Twitter stats, or if you look at some of these products, it was like, all right, there's some retention numbers that are crazy. Or did you see something early on that was like, wow, at 2018 there wasn't much happening, and then, did you see things happening, or what did you see?
Yeah, we saw growth, steady growth. The biggest thing we saw was just after CryptoKitties launched, lots of game companies got really interested. And, there were like CryptoKitties clones. There were like projects launching every once in a while that were doing interesting stuff in the space. People talking about it. Our user growth was like steadily going up. It was clear there was like passion and excitement. It was just not from mainstream people. It was from like early adopter, obviously being the first ones to adopt it, right? But there was always this feeling that this was like an inevitable thing. I don't think we ever really doubted that at some point the market would take off. I think what we didn't realize was under what condensed time period it would happen. Like at first we thought it would happen faster. Then it just kind of like flatlined for a while. And then it happened all of a sudden, right? So it's like slowly and then boom, like things take off. And it's still not, that's all to say, like, I think we're still really early. If you look at like the number of people actually interacting with these things, it's still not huge. Like excitement and media around it has been a lot more than I expected.
What tipped it recently that like...
Are you familiar with Top Shot?
Yeah.
Yeah, they're not big for us because we don't trade their cards on OpenSea, but they brought in a lot of momentum into the space. There's been new creators coming in the space. So like Mark Cuban started doing NFTs. Lindsay Lohan launched some stuff. Soldier Boy, 2 Chainz, a lot of the rappers. We did a drop with Shawn Mendes, Kings of Leon. Actually, a big catalyst was this one called Beeple. That generated a lot of buzz, and I think it got sort of the artist community pretty interested. Then Grimes did a drop recently. That was pretty big. 3Lau, the DJ.
I saw the 3Lau drop. Yeah.
There's an open question around whether this, like, these amounts are sustainable at all. Probably the answer is no, right? I don't think that every celebrity or artist can expect to sell millions of dollars of digital assets. I think a lot of those people are hoping that they'll be able to resell them for higher, and that's probably not going to be the case.
I guess I've always been in like the picks and shovels business.
Right.
So like I like your business. I like the Rarible and like the marketplaces because like it's kind of creating a second internet.
Yeah, I think so.
Like my friend who's he's an investor. He's like, he's excited for like all this stuff to displace Facebook. And I was like, what do you mean displace Facebook? But basically like how people can connect, as you said earlier, take your Twitter name separately. I thought that was kind of a fascinating concept.
Yeah. One of the really interesting things about this whole space is it's the first time that users own data, right? So you don't own your Instagram posts, and like Facebook can do whatever they want with them. You can't sell them, right? Like can't you can't take them somewhere else. Like, but in this world, I can go and I can buy an NFT on OpenSea, and I can go and take it to another marketplace. I can go and take it inside my virtual house. I can go and
Whoa.
take it wherever I want, and I own it. That's really powerful, and it's really giving people a glimpse of what a future could look like where you own your data. People are realizing that there's this whole like the economic activity of the internet has been monopolized by a few companies, and there's this whole there's
Yeah,
this
dude.
whole economy that is sort of just doesn't exist because of the business models uh, of Facebook, Google, Amazon. um, and what happens if you open up those economies and let people kind of capture a lot of that value? And what's crazy is that some people are doing that, right? They're going and quitting their jobs and becoming full-time digital artists, and people are buying their work.
If you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of our weekly office hours where I help you with your business questions and giveaways. I gave away my Tesla a few months ago. I love you, and I'll see you out there. Amen.